Hey guys, it's Josh. And in this APW live video, we'll have recent APW grads Kacey and Tu presenting their accepted Sheridan Animation portfolios. Recent Sheridan grad Jacob Rodella presents his accepted and rejected Sheridan portfolio. And just for fun, an APW character design exercise that you can do at home. Keep your sketchbook handy. If you're interested in videos like this, subscribe to our channel.
So this is the animation, the walkie-talkie. Did you guys see that okay? Was it like a little laggy or anything? Okay, that's good. So I'll do that like 2 more times so you can see. It's just a very simple backflip and a front flip, I suppose. And I kind of settle on a really simple jump because to be honest, I was not confident in my animation skill because I've never animate before, like ever, ever. I've only storyboard, I've only like done like sequences as like part of the training that we did in the summer intensive, but never like actually like animate. But Josh really helped me through this one and we kind of did like a fancy little ending at the end. Over here, these are the 2 hand drawings that I've submitted. I actually reused them. They're both used for the Seneca portfolio and the Sheridan one. So that's the first one. It's just holding a dice. A lot of people would try to find like references online and all of that. I find that most of the time there would be like money charged with them. So I try to find any free one there that might be offered online, but honestly they weren't really the best, I'd say, like especially on Pinterest, or if you just randomly find them on the internet, they usually do it in really bad angles. And um just personally, with what Josh has told me as well, it's better to pick kind of like a front 3/4 view for your hand so that nothing is really being blocked or covered. And this is my hand, so I kind of ended up just posing it myself, taking a photo of it and then just drawing it. Next up we have the storyboard. This one was probably the longest that it took me since I did everything traditionally, basically. Um, but here's panel number 1. Foxy skips along with a box of chocolate in his hands, excited to see Bunny on Valentine's Day. You can see that I tried to have this sense of depth in every single panel with like a foreground, middle ground, and then a background. There's also some shading, but not like intensely a lot because you don't want to kind of oversaturate and shift the focus from like the character itself. And just, I feel like if you do it digitally though, that might be better. But since I did it traditionally, the texture is very vivid. So I didn't want that to be like the main focus. Um, but second panel, but with Bunny now across from him, he is too afraid to make the big move. And then as he hesitates, a more charismatic fox comes over confidently with a bigger box of chocolate, and Bunny is head over heels. And then the fourth one is Foxy, with his Valentine now gone, breaks down in tears with a piece of his heart thrown into the trash nearby. If I find like that we have time, I can go through like the process work a little bit, but this initially had 2 ending, and I was really leaning to the happy ending, but Josh really liked the sad one, which is a little concerning. But but we went with the sad one and it works. It's okay. Um, but yeah, so that's for my storyboard. It's Valentine themes, and it might be cheesy, it might be a little cliche, but I think it really nailed the theme of opportunities don't happen, you create them, I think. So now we move on to the layouts, I believe. So this is my interior layouts. Some of you might have seen it if you guys visit the APW website. This is the interior one. And then this is the exterior. So because these are my main focus, I might just pause back here for a bit. But just for like the sake of explaining the layouts and for the context, this is also my character design. So as you can see, like these 3, well, two, if you just count it as layouts and character, they kind of connect each other in a way. There's like a story to it. My character rotation is the character that is appearing in both of the layouts. And by no means, if any of you are doing the portfolio, do you need to make both your interior and exterior like connected, like it's a story of like the same thing. Because initially during my process work, I actually had other ideas that I'll show you in a minute, where like they didn't really have to go together, basically. So just sticking around for the interior first. I'd say this is probably one of the hardest one that I did. Like in the portfolio itself, just right below character rotation. So for this one, I think what I struggled with the most was definitely finding out the right, not finding out, but like applying the right perspective to such a weird shape room. Because most of the time the room would be like a rectangle, right? Like it's like a box, basically, a 3D box. But with this one, there's a roof that is curved. So it's technically half, like it's like a semicircle on top of a rectangle. And it poses a lot of challenges for me, especially with these pillars. There was there was not enough reference online, if at all, for me to really base off. So this is, if anything, it's all based off my imagination, except for the pillars. I actually had to go online and see what they look like. But to kind of like, like these lines, I really had to kind of do some math to line them up and make them look believable. Same with like the flooring and the door and the windows and everything. So that kind of just comes to say that you don't necessarily have to have the right reference, but foundation and like just basic but like strong knowledge of perspective is really important, because if you can see here, this pillar, it's a lot darker than the other one because I erased that so many times that it kind of scrunched up the paper. But I guess it adds a nice texture to it, which again, everything in art is intentional, and if it's not, then it's abstract. So with this one, I think my most my pride is definitely this ladder as the foreground. And if you guys see right off the bat, the line quality is something that might pop up to you, which is how I kind of showcase depth. Josh really knacked me on this one because I did not know that I had to do that. But basically anything that's closer to you, right? It's just like common sense wise. It's gonna appear more clear. It's gonna be a little darker. Um, so here I have thicker lines on all of the ladders and the boxes and the bottles and all of this. But as we move further away into the windows, you can see that the line got thinner, it got a little more blurry, and all of that is intentional. It's not because like I ran out of like finger strength or something. It's all intentional. And there's less texture in the back compared to, like, as you can see here, there's like scratches, there's like the little dirt and all of that. It's all intentional. Something you'll also learn, while if you do take APW or just like when you're working with Josh one-on-one like I did, is focal points. Um, to make a successful layout, you have all of this thing you have to put into account, right? Like composition and like making it interesting and all the elements that create like the character and the story. But I feel like a lot of people don't really take into account focal points. It's basically meaning, where is the eye supposed to be landing on at the end of the day? So my focal point is this character, right? The pirate. He's here, he's looking at the map, and he sees the X. If I were to arrange, if I didn't arrange it like this, we probably wouldn't see it like kind of focus on the pirate character. The reason that we are able to focus on the pirate character is because you see here the ladder, every single step, it's pointing. Everything is going this way. Even the compass is pointing at the pirate, the bottle is pointing at the pirate, the chair falling is pointing at the pirate. The hat, the bottle, everything, even this little drawer here is pointing, this little scroll is pointing. So everything is intentional. It might feel like, oh, they just put it there. But I guess that's like the magic in it. Like you're supposed to make it look natural and flawless, but it's the art in creating the focal point. So it's just something that I noticed during like the work process is you kind of have to be intentional with the unintentional, I guess, if that makes sense. Um, I'll move on to the exterior, and then I'll walk you through the work process to kind of help you guys visualize more how it worked. So this is the external one. We you can see in a way it feels less clustered than the external. I mean the internal, because it's more like organic, right? There's more plants, there's more trees, and there's not a lot of objects to kind of um overwhelm you. But believe it or not, this one in the beginning process, it was really overwhelming to the eye because I had too much texture on everything. And that's like a common mistake that most people would make, right? They would try to add as much texture as possible, thinking that, oh, I need to make it look like overwhelming because that's how I see other like famous artists and like popular artists do their work. It looks so, there's so much thing going on. So I guess that's what I'm supposed to do, but I would say the opposite. You should always kind of go for simple, but like, I guess strong shape. Have again, like with the focal point, the shape in the tree and how it leads you to the pirate, and then the tail curling into the treasure chest, and the path leading into the cave, and the vines, and the what is it called? Weeping willows bringing down the eye, and then everything leading us in. It's all intentional, and the shape is more important because all of that texture, all of this thing, I added at the end. At the beginning, there was like no grass on the floor, there was no like rocks or anything, but just because it's like the final step doesn't mean it's not important, because before I added this, it kind of feels flat almost. It doesn't feel like an actual place. There was no terrain. There was like, it felt like it was lacking like life within the like the piece, I'd say. So it's good to pay attention to those little things when you're doing your work process for layouts especially. So shapes and focal points and line quality is really important. So these are the characters that auditioned but didn't really make the cut. This one I did during the summer intensive. This is another one I just did in my sketchbook. These are all the other ones that were, they auditioned but they never made it. Josh did not like these. He hated them. Like he was like, no, there's like at least two students doing which every single year. Don't pick that one. It's so cliche. My heart was broken. But we have everything else here. All of these characters, I actually drew them like during the course. Some of them were from my comic, like not comic, I mean my sketchbook. And then like this one I made up at the end, I think. And then so did this guy, I think. But this is just to show you that you don't really have to like find the right character right away. Like it doesn't happen like that. It didn't happen to me, at least. Like I didn't find them right away. I had to go through like a bunch of other characters that I have to come up with, and I know a lot of people actually have problems coming up with characters in like a blank piece of paper. I guess my advice to you, and it doesn't have to work, but the way I do it is I tend to look at a description of jobs. So I when I look at like the mailman, right? This is who I think of. And then you just draw it down, right? It doesn't have to look good. It doesn't have to be perfect, but it's who you think they are. And I find people, like normal people in our everyday life, much more interesting than like, fictional characters, because at least I know what they look like, and I can alter to make it fictional afterwards. So if that's something that can help you, like, oh, I don't know what to draw, I don't know what character to draw. How about you draw like the waiter at Starbucks, and then after you have her down, make her have crazy hair or something, or like make her secretly like an alien spy or whatever, right? Sometimes it works like that. So that's just a little piece of advice for you guys if you really struggle with the character design, because other than the rotation, they want to see an interesting character. You don't want to just, I don't know, draw a stick man, right? Um, so moving on to the process work. This isn't actually the first one. The first design that I had of him was actually because I was trying to do the layouts. As I was trying to do the layouts, I really wanted to kind of find the like a good character, I suppose. Um, because the way that I do my layout is that I want to know who's in that. So here's the first design. Josh really liked him because he said it looked like Jack Black. Um, so I was like, okay, that's the score. I'll I'll take that. But you can see like it's really, really, really sketchy. Like all the lines are so like they're like chicken scratches, right? They're shaded weirdly. It's so flat. There's like no volume to his beard or anything. His hands are weird. His feet don't look like feet. They don't look like they're on a plane, but that's okay because you're just trying to get the vision down. And because you're just trying to get the vision down, you wouldn't have to worry about making it perfect, right? And I did the sketch in 2 minutes. So I think that's how you should be doing it too. Don't spend like an hour trying to just draw one character, right? Yeah, so that's what I did after I decided I'm gonna do that one out of all the other characters. Um, I really kind of went in to make the line cleaner. And if you see it closely, you can see like I added a lot more 3D volume to his beard. A lot of people like they kind of back away when it comes to hair because it's still part of a person, but it's so organic because how do you make it look like hair but also has volume, right? So I'd say like really simplify the shape. When you simplify the shape, you can start with something like this, which is what which is kind of what I did. I drew him kind of looking like a gorilla, but you can really see like the pecs and then the stomach and how it pushes out, right? I drew it from any angle that I might have a question like, oh wait, if it looks like this in the front, how would it even look like on the side, for example? If you have a question, then draw it out and try to answer the question. You don't just sit there and be like, this is getting hard. I don't want to do it. Like it doesn't no, it doesn't work like that. So there's the nose, there's and the ear, and you can see I don't really focus on any other like small details like eyes or mouth. And then the beer, the beer was really hard. You can see it's a little darker because I kept going in and erasing and all of that. But I figured out what it would look like on the side. And still, this is not correct, like entirely, but it gives you the sense of assurance that, okay, at least that's what it should kind of look like. And then we go and we do this, right? And then we have an idea, okay, this is what I kind of want him to look like. So I think after that, I tested out. This looked really big on screen because I took a photo of it, but I have like a sketchbook that's like the 8.5 by 11 inch. And it's like I put it sideways and I drew it like this big. So that's how big it was. It's like this small. Um, and the reason I did that, and you'll see it too with my layouts later, is that I tend to draw these really, really tiny as if they're storyboards. Because I don't want to focus on any like details. I want to see what it looks like the entire thing. I want to see the vision. And you can see here, my vision was so wrong. It looks like it's gonna top like it's gonna fall backwards. Like he has nothing supporting him. This one looks like he's like holding on for dear life. He's gonna fall backwards like any second right now. So that's okay because then your strategy wasn't working. Then we do an upgrade into this one, right? And then upgrade, we add more curves. We make it seem like humans because although it is a character, it is 2D, it is fictional. You don't want it to look like like that, right? There still needs to be form and curve and everything kind of counts. And you can see I kind of kept like the little eclipse here, which you guys will actually do practice if you do the course. Um it helps to give an idea that there is volume to this thing. So later when I add the straps, it'll have to go around the form and not just end here flat because that's not how it works. So after I got this one done, this one is only a little bigger than the other one. I took a photo of it, printed out, and then I got to this one. And then after I got to this one, I bought this light pad that Josh recommended to me. And I put the light pad, put this piece on, and then another piece on. And then I got to this one. I'm open for questions then. You guys can just
Anyone have a question for two? You just type it in the chat.
should I do like a little display in the background while we wait for the
What's your character?
character design, or do you want the personal work?
So, two,
Yes.
how long did the process for the character rotation take from start to finish?
Process for character rotation. That the character rotation was the longest one that I did. I'd say I started we finalized the character design in October. And I didn't get it done until basically February because Josh was so picky with it. We kept fixing it. So it was just like endless fixing. But I guess like if you wanna ask like when did I get to like the look of it, then I'd say like from October to like December is when we got to what it looked like. But then I kind of worked over the Christmas break. Like I drew like 8 to 10 hours a day. Then we got to that one.
And one more question.
Yeah.
You find it hard to move on from a character you really like when you know it just kind of wouldn't work out.
Oh my God. Yes, definitely. Have you seen all the characters that I do? I loved all of them, right? I loved all of the characters. Even I think my favorite one was never even liked by Josh. And I kind of just had to accept that it would never be with me and that witch doctor. And he liked the I want to show you. The baker grandma was his other option for me. He said, okay, you either do the pirate or the baker granny. But I was like, but I really want to do the mayor. I thought he was such a good design, but then Josh was like, no, what are you talking about? This mayor? This one right here? He didn't say it like that. He
Mhm.
was very nice, don't worry. But
Right.
like yeah, like all of this were like what I wanted to do, right? And not to mention the pirate, I literally drew him afterwards as just like, oh, this is what it's gonna be for the layouts. But then Josh ended up liking it, right? Um, so I'd say it's hard to move on.
All right, thank you too. So, if there's time at the end, case, I mean, two, you can show your life drawings and personal work. We got to move on to our next guest speaker, Kacey. Just hold on to your questions, everyone. So if you have a question and didn't get answered, just hold on to it because we'll have a Q&A at the end, and you guys can ask your questions, and we'll have all three guest speakers here to answer your questions. Okay. So our next speaker, let's actually, I know we can't, I can't hear you clapping, but in your room, if you could just clap for two, for giving a great presentation and sharing us their portfolio work. Okay, thank you, too.
Thank you.
And our next speaker is Kacey. Kacey's here.
Hello, everyone. There's a lot of you. Wow. Okay. So, um, without further ado, let's just get right into it. I'll just share my screen, and here it is. So, hello, this is my portfolio. I'm just gonna talk about it. I have some process work, as you can see. I'll try to zoom through it so it's not too long. But yeah, so let's just get right into it. So some things about me, you guys probably know a little bit about it through Josh letting you guys know about it. But I was a first-time applicant for Sheridan Animations. I took APW online from 2022 to 2023. And afterwards, I was tutored by Josh, or APW teacher, from 2023 all the way until the portfolio deadline. I'm mostly a digital artist, so you'll see a lot of digital works aside from my life drawings. And I am an original character fanatic, so I love creating little stories and little characters. I'm sure a lot of you can also relate. So yeah. Here's my score sheet. I scored a 96. I think two scored the same score, I believe. And yeah, so I'll have some of the scores up just for a little bit after like introducing each section so that you guys can see it. And yeah, so let's start with life drawing. Yeah. So for the figures and hands, I both got 10 out of 10 for them. These were my short poses for my figure drawings, and these are my longer poses. For the short poses, I found them personally a little bit easier to do since I've been told a couple of times that I have good flow in my drawings. So the main thing I needed to work on was the actual anatomy and putting out the forms and everything. Prior to this, I don't have the images right now, but I didn't have a lot of structure in them, and I was just kind of putting lines anywhere that I thought was like, oh, let me just put a line like here randomly, maybe another one here. And it wasn't really showing an understanding of the forms. So after working it out with Josh and taking the APW course, I was able to really figure that out. And so here were the longer ones. You can kind of see I'm putting in a lot of landmarks and stuff. So yeah, for anyone applying to any art school that requires life drawing, I'd recommend just taking it slow and kind of focusing on some of the landmarks or important parts of the human body. For example, you can see like the sacred triangle right here. That's a nice landmark to have. And I'd also recommend first building everything out in basic forms. You can't really see it too much here, but there's a little bit of kind of a boxy form that I used to build out the butt, I guess, the back. Same with the torso. I used an egg shape for the rib cage, and I kind of built it out. Yep, and these were the hands, pretty much same things. For the life drawing section, I would really recommend starting early, even if you have maybe like a year or two, or even just a couple months until your portfolio. I'd recommend just starting as soon as possible, just so you can get into the feel of things, because I know a lot of people kind of tend to put it into last minute, and it's a lot easier on you if you start earlier. So for these, not too much to say. I just thought that I didn't see much hand drawings for Sheridan that had a yo-yo, and I thought it would have fit the prompt correctly. So I found a yo-yo, and I just, yeah, pretty much same thing. This is a boxy form, and everything is more or less connecting using some of the wrinkles as kind of indicators of the form. So let's get onto character rotation. I scored a 14 out of 15 for this section. It was this guy. I named him Professor Lottie. So here is the turnaround. Yeah, so for character exploration, how I started this was I first thought of an idea that I wanted to explore. At that time, I was really obsessed with axolotls. I still really like axolotls. I think they're really cute. I've never seen one in real life, but hopefully one day I can. And I just decided to jot down some character ideas. I first started with this character, an axolotl librarian. And I just worked out the shapes of the character. At that point, I didn't really know who Professor Lottie was going to be. As you can see, his name was Professor Axe before. So I was playing around with a lot of shapes. For example, this is a lot more boxy and triangular, probably a lot more of a sturdy character compared to this guy. And even these two have very different characteristics. See, this one is made of a semicircle. This one's made of more or less a full circle. And yeah, so after I had the base idea down, I decided to go and find some inspiration for things I wanted to change. At that time, I still wanted him, again, to be a axolotl librarian, so I put a bunch of images. You can see it's just random things that I wanted to include. For example, there's some show characters, there's some axolotl characters, and maybe some librarians, actual English professors, and whatnot. And once I took these two, I made it into this kind of board just to explore the character a little more and figure out which designs that I wanted to explore for the character design. Me and Josh eventually settled on these two characters. We thought these had nice shapes. There was a good contrast. This one is a lot more stout compared to the very long neck of this axolotl. And we decided to expand on these characters. I just made a couple more options just to see what I could do with the design. And of course, eventually we decided to go with this one. I do quite like this one because it is very long and I find it kind of satisfying to look at. I think it has nice shapes. But what's also important to note, just like two made a lot of different characters, I also made a lot as well. For example, this was an unused character. This was a clock keeper or clock worker. And I pretty much did the same thing for this one. I made just this idea and I was thinking, okay, let's expand this. Let's see what I can do with this design. So I made some of these. We eventually actually thought about doing this character. Only thing was the legs would have been such a pain to rotate, so we decided to go back on the axolotl character. So for the axolotl, I started out with the structure. Once I had that down, I actually had this turn around on 2 different files. One of them was laid out just like this, same layout, and then the other one was where all of these images, I took screenshots of them, and then I just piled them all on top of each other. So that way I could hide the layers, and it could just move like an animation. I could see how it would turn pretty much. So I think most important step of it was pretty much the structure. Once I got that down, I could focus on the details, the drafts. You can see right here, oh, whoops. You can see right here, the lines are quite sketchy, but it still has kind of the essence. And I was able to add some of the smaller details, for example, the antenna. I didn't have that in the structure. I just added that later on. And then I went on to lining, and there it is. So just look at it again. Need it. So yeah, there's mine. There's Professor Lottie. So for the next section, we have animation. Click to add text. Okay. For my processes, I first started out with some thumbnails. I also came up with this idea, and eventually it stuck around for quite a while. I really liked the idea. I found it a little bit funny. The walkie-talkie getting blown back by its punch, kind of. So this was animated in Flip-a-Clip. I'm used to animating in Flip-a-Clip, but I've never done other programs. The reason why I switched actually to Blender, you can see I kind of remade it, was because Flip-a-Clip doesn't really have a high resolution export. So I decided to just give it a try in Blender. Never done it before. I wouldn't really recommend trying out a new program for the portfolio season if you're in the portfolio season, but ultimately it did work out, so still doable. And after the draft, pretty much I put some scale measurements for the walkie-talkie just to figure out how big it would be in certain distances towards the camera. I think that really helped out. And I could make like adjustments to the sizing. So yeah, and here hopefully it plays. Okay, unfortunately, oh, there it is. There it is. So yep, that's the animation. I still find it pretty funny just seeing him getting knocked back, but I'd recommend for this section to also include some of the principles of animation. I'll admit I didn't really, I've studied a little bit of it before, but I didn't really think about them when making this animation. But ultimately after I did it, I looked back and I checked to see if I had all the principles. More or less did, so I'd recommend including some from some of the animation principles that you might learn in the program. So the next section is storyboard, the one that everyone dreads for the portfolio season. I myself was also dreading it, but I'm surprised I scored so high. Here it is. So the story goes, oh no, the skating rink is closed on a snowy day. But Fox looks at their bottle and gets an idea. Fox sprays all their water on the floor. What could they be up to? Eureka! The water freezes and Fox happily skates. So this was actually a story that was kind of inspired from childhood memories. I remember doing this at my local school when it was snowy. Of course, we weren't supposed to do it, but it was fun nonetheless. And same with all the other sections, I had a lot of different brainstorming of ideas of what to do. For example, I had an artist booth. Maybe the fox would go to a vendor, be really shy, but have the opportunity to make the opportunity by saying hi. This one was where the fox would find a ball and offer it to other foxes so that they could play together. And this is actually I believe the first draft of the idea that was used. You can see it has some of the aspects of this. So yeah, this was another draft. It was, I think, more further into the stage, almost at this point. You can kind of see the similarity when I flip by. And for these frames, I made sure to include a variety of different shots. And you can see me kind of, for these ones, this was all frame 1, this was all frame 2, frame 3, frame 4. I just came up with different ideas of what I could do for the frames, just to see what what positions and what compositions would work best. You can see for this one, I was a bit struggling on how the position might be, how the position of the fox might work. And yeah, so ultimately it turned into this. But yeah. So for the next section, we are on perspective drawings. I scored a 13 out of 15 for this one. And yeah, these were my 2 perspective drawings. This was my outdoor drawing. Here, I can zoom in a little bit and see it. And this was my indoor drawing. I believe they're the same aspect ratio, but yeah. So for the exterior brainstorming, again, same with all the sections. I pretty much had the same workflow for all of the different sections. I started out with the outdoor brainstorming. I had just a bunch of random ideas. These ones are barely comprehensible, but so long as you so long as you understand your own idea, it should be okay. And I just played around with different compositions, different ideas. And yeah, eventually me and Josh decided to expand on the underwater one, simply because we haven't seen many underwater layouts for Sheridan. So I expanded on that a little bit. Originally, as you can see, they were kind of mermaids, but it was a bit hard to communicate. So I decided to think back to a old watercolor painting that I did called Official Romance, pun intended. And it was they basically had some goldfish guards on it. And I thought it was an interesting concept. So I decided to reuse some of the fish aspects, almost like SpongeBob. And I created these 3 layouts that I found were quite intriguing. As you can see, this one and this one were ones that I liked particularly. So I expanded on them, made them a little bit more clear to see where everything was. And I tried to include a foreground, a midground, and a background. And I hoped to have just separate planes that you could see a lot more clearly. Eventually, of course, we chose this one because the path and everything was kind of pointing towards the castle. We felt like it was good. It was a good focal point and it was nice to lead the eye. And yeah, so here is the final one. You can see through the shading that I did, or the blocking out of the colors, you can kind of see each individual layer. For example, this is the very close foreground of the rock. This is this is still the foreground. However, it's just a little bit farther away, including the fish, including the path. And then this would have been the midground, including the focal point, which is the castle. And the background is just all of these rocks and stuff. So if you guys don't hesitate to shade your pieces almost a little bit. It helps with it helps with separating each layer of the piece, and you can see it a lot more clearly. So yeah, this is the indoor brainstorming. Here I can show, this was the indoor, and the brainstorming looked like this. It was pretty much all over the place. You can kind of see a reoccurring character. This is actually Professor Lottie over here in all of these actually. And yeah, I wasn't too sure what to do for the indoor. I was just thinking, oh, well, maybe since he's like a librarian or maybe like an English professor, I could have it so that he was in like a study room of some kind. So I tried to figure out rooms for that, but something that I realized when making these rooms was that English professors are really hard to communicate through visual stuff other than books and pencils. So I eventually changed that idea, as you can see in the next few. This was still with the English professor theme. And eventually I thought, what other interests could I give Professor Lottie? And I thought since he was an axolotl, maybe I could make him kind of a bug fanatic. Maybe he was studying bugs. So I came up with these 2. This one has a lot more of the spirit, but as you can see, this one is going towards the actual layout that I picked. Me and Josh discussed that we really liked this kind of angle. It really helped kind of separate the room from being too boxy. And this one, of course, was a little bit hard to read with kind of the second layer being really small. So after we decided to pick this one, we expanded it a little bit and it turned into sort of an attic area. And I decided to add a lot more bug stuff. As you can see, from here to here, there's a lot more like bug jars and whatnot. And yeah, these are meant to be cocoons. I got this idea from one of my art friends. Thought it was a really good idea, so thank you very much. And yeah, so once I was done the drafts, you can kind of see it in the background. I decided to put it into a different file as a PNG, and over top of it, I kind of worked out all the perspective, how it would actually work. As you can see, there's the two vanishing points right over here. And over here off the page, actually, there's actually another vanishing point. I think I cropped it out. But yeah, there's another one. The reason why I have so many is because when things are rotated, you can also actually still draw them in perspective by moving them on the horizon line, which is a really cool thing. And so yeah, so here is the final one. And let's move on to personal works. I got 15 out of 15 for this one. Personally, I didn't have to worry too much about this one since I just like drawing a lot of characters of my own and stuff. So I got to reuse a lot of pieces. I found it easier than a lot of the other sections. As you can see, I think something that helped me a lot was that I had a variety of ideas and also mediums. I realized throughout a lot of the accepted portfolios that they have a lot of just different mediums of art that people used. For example, these are all digital. This was 3 individual pieces. This was a BizDev pack. This was just a compilation of illustrations. This was a character sheet. And then on this side, we have pottery work and we have acrylic paintings over here. So I think I got to show that I had a lot of skill sets and varieties. I'd recommend doing that. And I also have a PDF of my sketchbooks in here. For these ones, I would recommend like not worrying too much about having to put it into your portfolio. Just draw whenever you want. Like a lot of these were just, I had a pencil, I had a paper, and I was like, oh, hey, might as well draw. I'm kind of bored. So there it goes. And ultimately, I feel like it turns out better when you're just drawing for fun rather than drawing for like something that you're expecting it to be in. And yeah, I have an animation reel. I'm not sure if we have enough time for that. So I'll skip over that for now. And for some tips, I would recommend giving yourself lots of time. Start prepping early. These two are pretty much, they go hand in hand. And also have a lot of options. As you can see with a lot of my works, I gave myself a lot of options and a lot of things to fall back on. For example, if I theoretically was working on this one and I decided I don't really like this character much anymore, I could have always felt back on maybe this design or maybe this design. And I had a lot of different options. Same with storyboarding and same with all the other sections like perspective drawings, personal works. And yeah, there it is.
Thank you, Kacey. Great. So we're just gonna open the floor for 2 questions for Kacey. So if you guys want to ask your question, just put it in the chat.
Here, I can put the animation reel just in the background.
So we have a question. As a digital artist, what tablet do you use?
Okay, so currently I have a Wacom tablet. I know some of these pieces I did on my iPad. I know this animation I did on Flip-a-Clip on my iPad. I think using my finger, because originally I was a finger artist. Same with this one, but I do use a Wacom, so. Yeah.
And what was a section you struggled with the most and why?
Ooh, I think section I struggled with most would have probably been perspective drawing. We do have exercises in APW that taught us a lot about perspective, but nonetheless, personally, I don't draw a lot of perspective in my personal pieces, as you can kind of see. They're kind of flat or they're kind of just cartoony, 2-dimensional. So I found these two particularly hard. I think this one was the hardest for me, just because I wasn't used to drawing it. So yeah.
Great. And we have just a little bit more time. So I see one question that I'm just gonna ask you. Did you find it difficult to keep the character? Oh, the question popped away. Did you find it difficult to keep the character height consistent?
For this one, a little bit, but more or less not really, because I had the lines that I could line up. You can also do this as well, but also keep in mind that it's a 3D form because, for example, Professor Lottie is on a circular kind of perspective and it's kind of tilted down in perspective. So technically, in a way, the perspective lines would have to follow the circle's perspective and kind of go up. But more or less, if you kind of line it up and kind of guesstimate or just flip through a lot, that helps a lot with helping to keep the height of the character in correctness.
Great, thanks. And just one final thing that I just want to say for both of you guys. For you, Kacey, and two, we have a question if you're able to put your social media account in the group chat or in the chat box because we have some
Sure, yeah,
people that
I'd be
are
happy
that
to.
want to follow you.
Sure.
Sure is so because I really only have Instagram. Is that like okay?
Yeah, if you want to give your Instagram, that's up to you. But yeah, just whatever you post your art, if you have somewhere you post your art, so everyone can take a look at it, that'd be great. Awesome. Okay, let's see here. All right, so I'm gonna just spotlight two. So thank you both, two and Kacey, for showing us your portfolio and giving us insight on your whole process. Kacey with your digital portfolio and two with your traditional portfolio, two different routes, but you guys have shared very similar steps to finishing your portfolio. So I just want to thank you for taking the time to show your portfolio. And yeah, we're actually going to take a little break right here, but from just a review of the portfolios. And I'm going to give you guys a simple exercise. So if you have a sketchbook around or a piece of paper, I want you guys to grab that right now. You guys are going to do a little bit of drawing. Okay, it can just a pencil and some paper. So I'm just going to remove the spotlight. Yeah. Okay. So right now, everyone, you're looking at a blank screen, right? You're probably wondering, what are we going to do? Ooh, what are we going to do? So with both two and Kacey, you've seen like specifically with characters, they'll draw a character and then they'll work on another character, and then they'll have a whole bunch of variety with their character designs, right? I'm going to introduce you guys to a simple but fun exercise that you guys can do on your own if you're feeling like you're struggling to come up with the characters, right? Everyone has their own little process of creating characters that you heard from two. Two was like, well, when I'm drawing characters, I thought of a job and I tried to draw a character based off of that job. Kacey has something similar. They had a character. They're just come up with a bunch of characters. But this exercise is very simple. It's short, and it involves you just kind of going with the flow and letting go of what you're used to drawing. So if everyone has a sketchbook out, or it doesn't have to be a sketchbook, it could be a piece of paper or the back of, like, let's say you're in your mom's office and there's like a little scrap piece of paper on the side, and you just grab that and grab a pencil or even a pen, right? So Jacob, too, Kacey, if you guys are here as well, you guys are gonna need to do this. Yep. Okay. So with this exercise right here, I'm gonna draw a shape. Okay. So let's say my shape is like that. Okay. We're gonna have 2 minutes to draw a character based off of this shape. Okay. So I'm gonna go first. I'll just draw this one. And then I'm gonna give you guys another shape and you guys draw a character based off of that shape. And then once we're done, I'm gonna get you guys to hold your character up to the camera. Okay. So you'll take your drawing, and if there's anyone that wants to, I'm not going to force you to, but if there's anyone here that wants to hold their drawing up into the camera, don't be shy. This is all fun, right? With these characters, it's not about making the best character. It's about just the process of um, doing the drawing and just coming up with being okay with coming up with anything, right? It could be whatever, right? But this is a great exercise to just get you in the creative flow and also out of just the habits that you're used to doing. Okay, so I'm just gonna take this shape right here and I'm gonna keep my drawing loose. So you don't wanna tighten up. Like when I say tighten up, I mean your arm, you're getting stiff. Keep your drawing loose and gestural. All right. I'm just gonna add a couple lines. All right, notice how my lines are sketchy, right? There's no final lines here. Right? Everything is kind of just flowing with one another.
Josh, do you want them to be drawing now or just watching?
You guys can watch right now, but if you're drawing, that's perfectly fine. Right? Right? And that 2 minutes is up. That's it. Right? It doesn't have to be perfect. It doesn't have to be anything special. It just has to, you just have to take your pencil, put it to paper, and just go with the flow. Okay? So what I'm gonna get you guys to do now in the meeting, I'm gonna get you guys to draw a new shape. So I'm gonna get you guys to work on this now. Okay. So give me a second. I'm gonna give you guys a shape right here. There you go. That's your shape. Actually, no, I'm gonna leave it like that. You guys are probably looking at it and thinking, what the heck is that? Right? Again, when you're doing this, just stay loose. Don't worry about what the drawing is going to turn out to be. This is all about just going with the flow. Let your pencil roam the paper, make marks, and then feed off those marks that you make. So let's say if you make a mark and you're like, oh, I don't like that mark. Just go with the flow, right? So it's like speaking, right? Everyone, when you're speaking to someone or just talking, you just kind of go with the flow. You know, maybe you think about something, but for the most part, you're just letting the drawing happen. Okay. And just remember to stay loose and sketchy. Don't worry about making the drawing too tight or perfecting the drawing. Right. The key word is gestural. You want to stay gestural with your drawing. Okay. So I'm going to give you guys just a little bit more time. Just a little bit. Here, this is what I'll do. I'll get the three presenters, Kacey, Jacob too, and Vince actually. Vince is doing this as well to show theirs in a second. And then we'll have three brave volunteers share theirs. Okay. So just 20 seconds left. Let's say um, you're drawing characters and you're just so frustrated with, like you're coming with the same thing over and over again. You know, just fill up a page of these, right? And they're just going to, like, once you have the page, then you can just start sketching. Give yourself a timer, 2 minutes. And then once the 2 minutes is up for each drawing, move on, right? And then close your sketchbook. Simple exercise that you guys can do when faced with a creative struggle, or you just feel like you want to change up the characters that you're drawing, or it doesn't have it doesn't have to just apply to characters. It can apply to props or anything else, right? It's all about taking your creativity and creating something with what's in front of you. Okay, so right now let's have let's have Kacey. Kacey, if you're able to hold up yours. Okay. Oh, I think you're,
Yeah, it's blurred a bit. There we go.
there we go. So we got, almost reminds me of Jude. Well, maybe not Jude. The guy from 16. It has that kind of skater dude
Yeah.
vibe to it. Awesome.
Jesse?
And is 2 around, or I'll put Jacob up.
Yep.
No?
Still here. There.
Oh, there's 2. Okay, so 2. Let's take a look at.
So I don't know why I saw that.
That's super cute. I like the guy.
So cute.
I love it.
It looks like Mr. Potato Head, sort of.
Yeah,
It kind of does.
the
It's just
gentleman.
like a button.
Oh, yeah.
And Jacob. Jacob, let's see yours. Oh, Jacob, yours is blurred out.
Let me try and where's the video?
And Ray, I'll get yours in a second.
Okay, there we go. No, just
The blur thing, yeah.
there's he's like also kind of skater vibe as well.
Yeah, I
Just
like
his
it.
hair. Yeah, and then
love
there's
the- I love the hoodie
yeah.
and the bird. Nice, awesome. And then Vince, you were doing one too, right?
I was doing one. This
All right,
is,
let's see
I guess, I don't know, is this, whoops, a sniffing slug? I don't know what it is.
it.
I don't know. Something.
Something's in the air and he's just sniffing
Something's
it.
literally in the air. Yes, that's right.
Stimpy, is that you?
Yes,
Yes,
it had
it's got Snippy vibes. It's so
Yeah,
true.
Okay, so Ray, oh, there you are. Want to hold yours up to the camera?
Ooh.
Nice, I like
That's
it.
Cool.
Awesome. I love the pearls,
The pearls are great.
pearl necklace. Awesome.
Nice.
Is there anyone else that wants to share theirs?
I guess I could share mine. Oh,
Yep. Who was that?
Iman.
Iman. All right. Let's take a look at yours. Nice. I love
Hold
it.
it a little closer. Oh.
That's it. Hold it a little bit more to your left side.
Kind of like
Right
a
up. Yep, there we go.
ghostly
Oh,
figure.
yeah.
Nice. Like the little ghost. It's like a
That's right.
drape right over the character.
Yeah.
They look like they're on a mission for something, or they're just, pacing around. Excellent.
It's a ghost on their way home from work.
Yeah.
Yep. On a long day of scaring people, they're just tired. Nice, Iman. Nice character. Is there anyone else that has a character that they want to share?
I saw it in the chat.
Someone put it someone put a picture in the chat.
Oh, I'm not able to share that one.
If I can.
But if you guys can
you want me to share
get the
it?
chat, then you can.
Oh yeah, just look in
Yeah,
the
just look in the chat.
Oh, there it is.
Awesome.
Really
Good.
cute.
Good. I like it. Like a little monster character with like they have a sunshine above their head.
Hmm.
And I think Finn, you had a shape. Oh, we have more volunteers.
People
Velvet and Finn, if you're around and you your camera's there, you can share yours too. There we go.
Okay.
Who's that?
Super cute. Velvet.
Okay.
I like the wings.
Great.
I incorporated the wings into the shape of the body.
That's so
Mhm.
cool.
The angel.
Hair.
Nice.
Very complex.
All right. Finn.
Hey,
Hey, let's take a look at yours.
just one thing though. It's not the shape you had. It's the bird shape you had. You know that one?
The first one. The first one. Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Let's
I'm
take a
not
look.
quick drawer, so
Let's hold it up just a little bit higher. Just a little bit higher.
The light is, yeah.
Neat. Neat. I like the little
Yeah.
face in the center.
Face is great.
Almost robotic.
I'm not done it, but I did the best I could with 2 minutes.
You know what? That's all you need, 2 minutes. And then here's the thing. With this exercise, you can take the character and revisit it. Just do a whole bunch of them and then just revisit it if you like the character. Right? Maybe you get a character, a couple of characters that you don't like, and then one that you really like. You can just continue working on that, right? Just as if you were to do it with a portfolio. Right. And then in the chat, I'm seeing a lot of characters in the chat, which is great.
That's Coralista.
Good. Nice. Like the seal, kind of fishy seal looking character at a circus. Great. And I think there's a few more in the chat. Nice, a bunny. So you guys are doing great characters. Awesome characters. See this exercise? I challenge you to just do it over and over again. Just take this exercise when you're on your own and you're feeling like you want to sketch, but you don't want to, you just want to relax and draw. Just do this. Give yourself 2 minutes or more. There's no time limit on this exercise. You can give yourself more time. I think that when you're doing it quicker, there's less time to think and more time to just feel out the character. I think that's better. But if you were to, just set a timer and just do a quick one and then do another quick one, you'll have easily a bunch of characters that you can develop or, just close up and just let them exist in your sketchbook. Perfect. I love the little bunny on the ball. And they have their hat and their long, like eggplant-like body. Excellent, guys. Great characters. Okay, so what we're gonna do right now, we're gonna get back into our talk, and I'm not gonna introduce this person. This person's gonna introduce themselves. But Jacob, just take it away. Take it away, Jacob. So Jacob's gonna present their portfolio, and you guys can ask questions to Jacob afterwards, and we'll open the floor for more questions later. Okay.
Sounds good. All right. Thank you, Josh. Yeah, so let me start sharing. Screen one. All right, so here's just my website. As you guys as Josh kind of mentioned before, my name's Jacob. I'm a Sheridan graduate, so I just finished at the animation program at Sheridan. And yeah, so and I got my start all the way back in 2017 with APW. And back then there was no online courses, and even the portfolio process for Sheridan was it was still physical back in 2017. And so just to give a kind of a general overview is essentially it took me I actually had it was 3 attempts to get into Sheridan College for animation. And my first attempt was when I was in high school. And then yeah, exactly. I'm sure some people can relate, right? It's tough. It's definitely really tough to get into these animation schools. And I only had to go off of what I learned from high school, right? And in high school, at least the school I was with, it was very traditional, and I learned a lot. But when you're drawing for animation, there's a lot of things, and there's a different way of thinking, and APW is that perfect bridge for me, kind of getting me from that old way of thinking of just really traditional and kind of just drawing strictly what you see, to a point where it was drawing for animation and finding the character in everything, and finding the gesture and bringing the life out in the work that you do. So what I'm going to be showing is I'm actually going to be showing all 3 of my portfolios. I'm going to try and make it quick because I know the time is limited. And so, but what I'm hoping that you guys get out of looking at my 3 different portfolios The one that I did in high school in 2017, the second one I did in 2018 after I went to APW, and then the final one that I got in with, which was in 2019. And that one, I'm going to show all three, and you're gonna see the progress. And the nice thing is you can also see, like as I'm showing stuff, I think it'll be really good to kind of maybe see where you're at, right, with your drawing skill and where you think you are at with what you've maybe already produced for previous portfolios and things like that. And you can kind of see what it might take to kind of elevate your portfolio to that next step, right? And so one last thing I want to just bring up before we get into it is the first portfolio I scored, I think it was 75. And then the second portfolio, which is the one that I produced after taking one of the courses at APW, that one I got an 80% and I was on the waiting list. So I was really close to getting in, but it was just, I just fell short. And then finally, with my final portfolio, I got a 95. So I'm going to show you what I learned along the way, and hopefully you guys can kind of see those steps just by seeing the different portfolios. So I'm going to open up, we're going to start with life drawing. And I was saying to Josh earlier, looking at some of this early stuff is like looking at photos of yourself when you were like 13 in the awkward years, and you're just kind of like, you cringe a little inside. So that's what we're gonna explore this together. We're gonna go through and see where I learned and what I improved on. So here is my original portfolio. This is the one I made in high school, and we're starting off with life drawing, and we can see it's very much exactly what I'm seeing, right? Like, so there's this pose and I'm drawing exactly that. It's very stiff, it's very, there's really no exploration going on inside the character. And, these are scans because these were physical drawings that I did for the portfolio. So I forget, I'll zoom in just so that it's a little easier to see things, but there's not too much. I'm just kind of basically drawing exactly what I'm seeing. Here's the other long pose. And there's no face, like I just leave the face blank. There's again, not really much exploration going on inside, and I'm kind of just drawing exactly what I see, and I'm sticking to kind of the outline. And it's almost just a silhouette of a character, but it really doesn't show any knowledge of, the anatomy and anything going on internally. So, and then these are my short poses back then. And this is, again, I had never done gesture drawing in school, so this was my best guess at the time, right? Like I don't even have the feet included in this drawing. Like there's some things that are going wrong. Like the hair is just like I scribbled a little thing, and so, and like even like the knees and things aren't connected properly, right? And these aren't bad drawings, right? Like anatomically and like proportionately, like these are pretty proportionate, right? Like the proportions are pretty correct. They look like people, like, and like that's already a plus. And and like they're generally the poses are working, but this kind of, if you're kind of like at this level, there's nothing wrong with that, right? This is, you don't get it. Many people don't get a chance to do life drawing, right? And so, you like something around this is around the 75% range, right? And so let's quickly exit out of that and let's open up the following year. So let's go into 2019. So this is after I took APW and got some life drawing experience, right? So here you can already see with the long poses, there's just so much more going on here, right? Like I'm exploring inside of the form, right? Everything is included. There's nothing that's missing. I'm including important landmarks, which again, you learn at APW. We talk about the anatomy, we talk about the skeleton and all the different landmarks you want to include. There's a subtle suggestion of the bottom of the rib cage, right? There's this with the shading, there's an idea of how the form is actually wrapping around the drawing and things like that. And so, and there's an energy here, right? It feels alive. It feels a lot less stiff. Even though it's a still pose, just the quality of the line work and just the idea and tension behind everything is a lot is there. And so, this is the other long pose. And, there are some things missing, right? So it's not perfect, right? Like especially with my second portfolio, you'll see it's a lot better, but there are still things that aren't perfect, right? So, you kind of like, I didn't include much for the face, right? And I didn't like the feet are still kind of in that blocky form, right? Because especially with the longer forms, you can even see the structural lines underneath, you start with something more blocky and then you kind of build and build and build on top of that, right? And these are the short poses, right? So now we see a lot more energy in these poses. They're a lot more energetic. I'm including the face, things are moving. You've got, again, suggestions of anatomy, right? The rib cage here, how the pelvis kind of connects and, things like that. But there are still some things that are a little, missing, right? Like, look, like the knee is kind of, I'm leaving it a little bit suggestive, like there's not much, definition there and things like that. And so, but and overall, if we if we take a quick look at where we started, especially with the longer poses, we went from something like that already to, something, like this, right? And so we'll go to the final portfolio. And essentially, this is the one that I got in with. This is the one that I got into Sheridan with in 2019. And so I should re-emphasize the previous portfolio. The one we just looked at was like an 80%, and then this one that I got in with the third one was around 95. So so you can see here everything's included. We've got even more detail into the anatomy. Both feet are there, unlike that one, the other drawing we were looking at where I kind of kept the other foot still suggestive and things like that. And so we have it's fully rendered, it's fully there, and this is kind of what they're expecting for a long pose. They're like, because Sheridan will requires like 2 short poses and 2 long poses, and so for the long poses specifically, they really want to see as much information as possible. So everything should be included, nothing should be left for as guesswork, and we should really incorporate as much detail as possible. And so, yeah, same thing here, right? Like I have these, like you can see, like there's a structure, you can still see some of that blocky form that I'm using, especially for where we see the different sides of the planes, the different planes. And again, at APW, you get kind of learn how to build up the form, especially for these long poses with kind of these geometric and shape kind of ideas in mind, right? And I'm drawing through the form, right? Like I'm using some of the shadow and stuff to help suggest, how is what is happening in the middle of the chest. I have this line that's kind of very subtly running along the chest and things like that. So you have all these different things that really suggest that you understand what's happening. And these are the short poses. And this time, really everything is there. The hands, the feet, everything's there. There's a lot of energy, and again, you can be more, the lines don't need to be perfect, especially for the short poses. But they want to see energy and they want to see that everything is there, right? And so here we have like this really interesting pose, and it's kind of like, dynamic, and I'm using basic shapes, right? The body is kind of like this almost like this square, and I'm kind of suggesting things, but everything's there, even though it's still like, that foot is really just a shape, but these drawings are really quick. I think this one was like a minute, right? So it was, they aren't expecting, especially for the short poses, for everything to be, like perfect, but you want to have a clear understanding of what is happening in that pose, in that drawing. And here you can see that, right? So, so that is the life drawing portion of things. And again, like, you get to that point by practicing, and that's what APW offered me, because I just didn't have that experience in high school. Like I never did life drawing, right? And so it was super beneficial just giving me that foundation, because you draw hundreds and hundreds of drawings at APW of life drawing, and you just get it becomes second nature. And so understanding the anatomy and all those things, it really, really helps. And that solid foundation going into animation school is super beneficial, just because Josh and I, we were talking about this before. But what you learn from high school, right? Like, there's, especially once you go into like a school like Sheridan, you're in a class with like, 30 to 40 other students. and there's one professor, and that class is maybe 2 hours long and maybe if you're lucky, 3 hours long. And teachers won't get as much time to talk to you one-on-one as you would hope. And so if you kind of lack that understanding of life drawing, anatomy, animation, and any of the things I'm going to be talking about, right? It becomes you're almost playing catch up for the rest of your time in school, right? Because they don't get that much time to show you the basics, to help you develop the basics, right? You are kind of like, APW provides this perfect opportunity to just kind of, learn everything so that when you're in school, you don't have to catch up. You've already have everything you need to know, and you can just kind of learn all the new stuff, because that's what they're going to be focusing on. As soon as you get into school, there's going to be new concepts that they're throwing at you, and you just keep growing from there and there and there. And so having that solid foundation, making sure you get that practice in, really helps with the life drawing portions of things. So we're going to go into the hand drawings now, and I won't spend too much time, because the same ideas as I was talking about with life drawing is what they're looking for in the hand drawings, right? So this is back in 2017. This is my first portfolio. The hand drawings are, again, I'm drawing kind of the outlines, right? And there's nothing wrong with it. It looks like a hand. And if I flip, it was like a ball throwing that year was the prompt, right? Everything looks correct, but I'm not really showing my work, right? And a lot of people probably, I hate to bring that up because this probably brings up like math, like high school math, but in art, they want to see the same thing too, especially with the portfolio. They want to see your work, right? Which is that structure, those layers underneath. How did you get to this point, right? And so here I'm just I'm only drawing that final outline, almost silhouette, but I'm not showing the process. I'm not showing how, like, where's the structure. I do have some lines, but those are just wrinkles. It's not really, I'm not really even drawing through the form, like I'm not showing that other finger behind. And those are all things they're looking for, right? Because they don't want to just see, something like this, because it ends up looking really just, well, dull and like lifeless. And then it also ends up feeling almost like traced, right? Because you're only drawing the outlines, right? And so they want to see some more of the form, right? So what I have is then the following year, this is my second portfolio in 2019. You can see I've added a lot to the hands, right? In the hands and even the object that the character is picking up, right? Things are a lot more, there's a lot more thought put into it. I'm using a box to kind of create the wrist, which is again something you're taught at APW, and following along the form, right? Like I'm drawing lines that go along the inside of the hand, right? And these aren't lines that are actually there, right? Like this is me showing I understand how the hand is structured, and how I can actually see what the depth and the overall volume of it looks like, right? And so these are the things that they're looking for, right? And so I scored a lot better this year because I was showing that stuff. And then if we go into the final portfolio, this is the one I did in 2019. This is the one that I got accepted in with. On this one, I probably show the most detail, right? So I showed a ton. And if I flip through the drawings, it's almost like an animation, right? And again, I did these on paper, but you can do these however. And the way I drew these was I got my brother to do the posing for me. So if you can find anybody, if you can find some friends, if you can find anybody that to just help you out, do some posing. And I think I ended up taking a photo of my brother, and then that way he didn't have to keep it up in the air for like 2 hours and whatnot. So so it's whatever you can do, like it helps. And so it is always best to just draw from like what you see, and that's what you'll be doing in APW. But there's nothing wrong with using like a reference photo and taking a photo, and anything that will help you, right? Like use it, right? Don't feel ashamed to use anything, right? And so and yeah, so and obviously here there's lots of detail. I'm drawing the form, and and that's about that for that. So let me go into the next area, right? And let's go into character rotation, right? So yeah, we're going back to 2017, my first portfolio. And this is in high school, and so this is my character. It's a little fox character, and I had no idea how to do a character turnaround. I had zero idea. And so it turned out good, all things considering. So I'm going to flip through the different poses. And so it turns, like the character feels like it's turning, but there's a lot of proportionate things that aren't quite working. You know, the arm on the 3/4 view like extends downward, like it gets longer on the second pose. Like there's some things that aren't quite working as good as it could be, right? And again, like this, all the thing, if you know, if you're at this level, and like if you're at, you know, and especially with your first portfolio and things like that, like there's nothing to be ashamed about. Like this is a, you know, I got a 75 on that first portfolio. You know, that's a pretty good spot to be, right? And so and even if you were lower than that, right, like it's again, it's just it's an opportunity to just keep learning, and you're, you know, you're already making you know, conscious decisions to learn as much as you can, right? Like you're here watching this. So again, like you're already making all the right steps to just keep improving, right? And so again, if you just keep sticking with it and drawing and practicing and attending things like this, you know, and just surround yourself with people that are excited to draw and keep drawing, you're going to keep improving. So we have this character turnaround, but I did not do any structured drawing for this. Like this was me just like, okay, I have a character in my head, and I was just drawing each pose like flat. There was no like process work. And I'm going to show you more of the process stuff with my later stuff, because that's when I actually started doing process, right? So the first portfolio, I just kind of like, okay, first try, let's go. And like some things aren't like fully like you'll notice like this bandana, like I just kind of draw a shape here, but there's no really form to it. It kind of feels flat, you know. And so there's all these things that feel off because there's no structure underneath, because I'm just kind of guessing, right? And so we're gonna go into my next character, which was in 2018 with my second portfolio. And this is Sushi Cat. So Sushi Cat is kind of this really round, and as the name suggests, a cat that's a sushi chef. And so I decided to make this character because I loved cats. I love sushi, so I was like, okay, let's just combine it. Let me have fun with this character, and always try to have fun with what you're producing for your portfolio, because you don't want to feel, you know, bored when you're doing it. You don't want to make it feel like an assignment. Like make characters and make things that you're excited about, ideas you're excited about. So if you can incorporate anything you enjoy, do that, right? And so here I'll turn around the character, you know, and this time the turnaround is a lot better, right? And there's a structure. And we can like see, you know, like I kind of have this egg shape for the body. You know, I'm drawing the arm like that, kind of that structure line. And again, because I did this on paper, I did like layers and layers and layers. So like I had all the structure on like separate layers, and I had a light table so that I wasn't like had it so that not everything was on this final drawing. And so I'll show you some of the process because I have some of that. And so yeah, this is like a scan of one of the pages in my sketchbook that I had while I was at APW, right? So like at APW, you're always, you know, drawing characters in your free time, things like that. And so a lot of great characters come out from just sketches you're drawing for fun. So this was the character I decided I wanted to develop and make do my turnaround, right? And so that's the original drawing. And then, you know, I took it to kind of like, okay, I'm going to break it down into basic shapes, right? So I kind of made the body like this egg shape, because it's a lot, once you start thinking about it simply, right, in a simple form, it's a lot easier to turn it around. Because that first time when I was trying to rotate that fox character, I ended up you know, like I was so overwhelmed because I was trying to rotate everything at the same time. But if you can try and just like break it down into simple shapes, and like Kacey showed a really good process drawing of kind of like she had all her like characters kind of broken down into and same with two, like they both had like a really good like just like you kind of break it down into circles or squares or whatever basic shapes your character is, and you kind of rotate that first and then you build on top of it. And so here these are just kind of lines that I was using. I know somebody in the chat had that question about like how do you keep a character's height consistent, and like these lines are these kind of these guides that I put down to try and make sure that the character was meeting a similar mark in each of the each of the poses, right? So I had this line, and then, you know, when I went to go draw my next drawing, and you can imagine I put a page on top of this page. I can look at the line and see, oh, that's how tall the character is supposed to be. Like that's the top of the ears, and oh, this line is for the top of the eyes, and so you can really make sure that you're hitting all of those marks, right? And so, and anyways, and so that was a little bit of the process, and so in the end, in 2019, actually that year, so that with my second portfolio, I actually ended up scoring perfect with that character. So in 2019, I just ended up using the same character. So I was like, okay, I got perfect last year. I'm gonna focus on the areas that I didn't do as well. So I ended up just sticking with the same character for my 2019 portfolio, just because it had it scored well the prior year, right? And so and another thing that helps is flipping, right? You'll notice I'm flipping through these images, and you can really see how a character rotates when you kind of, you know, just flip between each of the views, right? And so especially like when you're first trying to understand the character, first trying to rotate it, having it all on one page like this really helps, because you can kind of keep the height and things like that consistent. But like if you're doing it digitally, you can just have everything on separate layers, and you can just make sure that each layer, you know, the top of the head is kind of where the top of the head is in the other drawing and things like that. And so yeah, so that was the character. And let's go quickly into animation. So I'm gonna stick with so there actually was not an animation portion to the portfolio for Sheridan in my first, like the first time I applied. They had a different kind of uh like section altogether. It was like character acting. I can show it quickly, but it's not really as relevant. So it's like you had to do like they gave you a prompt, and then you had to draw your character doing interacting with a prop, I think it was. So it's like, you know, this character sees a piece of garbage, they pick it up and they throw it out, right? But it's very stiff, right? Like the poses are stiff. There's not much like going on, and the action isn't all that exciting either, right? Like it's like the character, like it just feels like a 90-degree angle. Like it just feels like the character's kind of got like, I moved their back and just rotated it. And so this feels, again, this is before I did gesture drawing. This is before I started doing life drawing and things like that, and really started to understand line of action and, you know, drawing and just kind of trying to feel out a pose. And so you can see here just in these early drawings that things are feeling a little stiff. But as we're going to see with the other animation, like things end up getting you want to always feel squash and stretch and line of action and all these things that make the drawing feel alive, right? So we're going to go look at some other stuff. For my second year, I'm actually going to skip the second year one because that was the first year they did animation, but there was no prompt for it. So I just had a character walking, which was pretty basic. Like it was just and I don't think there's too much there that you guys will gain from. But for my final portfolio, for my third year one, they just wanted us to animate a prop. That was it. That was the prompt, was just animate a prop. So I just did this like this boom box, and I just have it bouncing, and that was my animation, right? And so as we can see, there's a lot of animation principles, but some of them are squash and stretch, right? They want to see, you know, so like as the character hits the ground, I have them squash a little bit, they stretch, you know, as they jump up. You know, we have some secondary action with with like the handle on the actual boombox, right? And and he has a little bit of a face. It's like I designed it to make it look like he has a little bit of a face, right? So it's like it's almost like it's alive. It's almost like it's got, and so you have, it's, you know, it's a very simple animation, right? And that's really what they're looking for in these portfolios, is just, you know, they're looking for a clear, like it can be a simple prop. They just want to see that it looks consistent, you know, that there's squash and stretch, that you're showing, you know, it feels believable, and that you know, and that all comes with just, you know, keeping your drawings consistent, keeping them alive, and really showing that, especially line of action and animation, which means good poses, right? You know, and so yeah, so that with the animation. And I'm sorry if I'm going through things quickly, but I want to make sure you guys see the different portfolios, and so there's a lot to get through, but we'll have time for questions and things like that. So I'm gonna, just to save time, for storyboarding, I'm gonna show my second storyboard. And so just like it always is with Sheridan, they give you a character and they give you like a theme, right? So you need to match the character and then make a story around it for that theme. And so this one you'll notice is quite flat, right? Like a lot of, like this is my second attempt, and you'll notice that like a lot of the subject, the character is kind of in the middle of each one of these panels. Right. And so, and again, there's some really stiff posing. Right. So like here, everything feels very linear, like everything's just like really symmetrical. And they want your storyboards to actually feel a little bit more dynamic, right? There's a lot going on. Composition is something you need to be thinking about, right? And so a very symmetrical, flat, straight composition like this is not typically what you want to include. You want everything to feel like it's alive, feel like it has energy, right? And there are there are certain circumstances where you can have things very symmetrical, but especially for the portfolio, they want to see things be a little bit more dynamic, right? And so if we go through, we have some foreground elements, we have some stuff in the midground, but again, the posing, the things like that, it's not very good. Things are very flat feeling. And quite honestly, the this storyboard was probably the reason I didn't get in on my second try. And it's because the storyboard, and I encourage everybody to kind of look at the mark breakdown for all of the sections of the portfolio. But the storyboard is huge. I think it's like 25% of the overall mark. And so that's 1/4. And there's like 6 other sections in the portfolio, but just this one section makes up this huge mark, right? And so that's why for my that's why I think you want to just really make sure that you nail that storyboard or any of the sections that are really like weighted really high, because it could be the matter of you getting in and not, right? Like I said, with that portfolio, I made it I made it on the waiting list. But if my storyboard, which I think I got like a 70 something percent on, if it was just a little bit better, I would have made it in, right? But because it weighted so much, it brought my whole mark down, right? So now we're going to look at my final storyboard. So it's still this possum character, as you can see. And so here we can see that the panels are a lot more dynamic. The camera angles are a lot more interesting. The acting's better, and things aren't so stiff, and things aren't so just flat or symmetrical, right? And so essentially, if we look at the different panels right here, right, like you see, like we can also even just tell what the story is based off of the images, right? Like before, I think from that previous one I was showing you, it might have been a little less clear what the story was, right? But this is very clear, right? Like everything you need to know is in just the image itself, right? Like we can see the possum, he's smelling a pie. He sees the pie. He's now climbing to get to the pie. And oh, he gets there and somebody's already eating it, right? So there's a little bit of a gag, there's a little bit of a story, and we can tell that what's happening visually. And so and there was a lot of process that I did for this because I really wanted to make sure I got it correct. So here's some like sketchbook drawings I did, and they're very, very like rough, right? Like look, like what is this? Like what are we looking at right here? Right. So it's like we're looking at things that are like really rough. And I had just pages and pages of just really rough sketches of, because I had a story idea that I wanted to do, right? I wanted it to be a surprise reveal. And so you could see I marked with like a little blue star these really early drawings. I was like, oh, this I like this composition, I like this. And that's that whole idea of process, right? Like you've got to draw and think, and you need to do a lot of like rough drawings first before you get to that really good idea, right? And that was what my first portfolio struggled with most, was I just kind of went into it and drew exactly what I first came up with. But you want to plan, right? There's a lot of planning, and planning doesn't need to take long, right? These are really quick sketches. These are really quick ideas. And I'm just kind of really quickly just drawing them out. I'm writing things, and I'm doing different versions of each shot, right? So I'm like, okay, this is I like this composition, but maybe what if we try this angle, or what if we try this angle? And so just keep exploring, keep trying to see what works best. And obviously here's like an early version of that first panel. And I have the character, he's facing the opposite way of the pie, but then I changed it so that he's actually pointing towards the pie. Our eye goes to that pie. And this goes back into what we were talking about with layout and composition. It's like you want elements of your scene to kind of point to where you want the eye to go, right? And so having him face the pie already brings our eye into that quadrant a little bit better, right? And here I'm testing multiple poses, right? Like, again, this is all physical, so these are scans, and you can see like I have different drawings that I'm like pasting onto my background. And so again, if you're doing this digitally, just do it on different layers. But I have these different poses, and I'm like, okay, which one do I like the most? Which one makes the most sense, right? And so I went with that, like something like that, right? And I changed the pie to be bigger in the frame. You'll notice like it's larger, right? It's more noticeable. Before it was kind of small. It's not taking up all that much space, right? So you want, and like, so this is very like a rough version of that drawing of him climbing. And then I got into this clean drawing, right? So there's multiple versions of each drawing, right? This is the final drawing, the first, like one of the first versions I did. And then eventually we got to this, and things feel a lot less stiff, right? Like this pose is very stiff. We can't really tell he just finished climbing, right? And then in this version, right, we can see he's like still just getting up over the wall, like he's just getting there. His pose is a lot more dynamic, and it reads a lot better than this original like sketch that I had there. So yeah, so that was the life drawing, or sorry, the storyboarding, my goodness. And then yeah, I know I've probably gone for a while here. I just want to quickly go into layout, and that's about it. And so with layout, just to save time, I'll show my second portfolio. So in this one, it was just an outdoor and indoor environment. So this was in 2018. This was like the one, not the one I got into Sheridan with, but I just drew my room, right? That was because like in APW, we were always practicing perspective. And so I was, again, just because of my background of like high school art, we were always drawing things like that we were just seeing. So I was like, okay, I'm going to draw my room. I didn't go anything fantasy with these layouts. And with the layout drawings, they really are just looking to see that you can draw things in perspective. If you can incorporate a story that's awesome as well, and will only make it better. And so this is just a drawing in my room, and things perspective wise are working, right? Like it works. Things are in the foreground, things are in the background. I have a character in there. And then I have the outdoor environment, and you'll notice it's not as good. And it's a park in my neighborhood. And I just have some kind of really flat feeling, trees and a snowman, and like the park itself is quite good. But the rest isn't, and it's feeling a little flat. And so I still didn't understand, how do I make an environment that feels, like a real, like how do I draw an environment, and how do I make it feel like, like dynamic, and how do I give some energy? Because you'll notice, just like what we saw with my life drawings, these look correct, like the perspective's correct, things look good, but there's no energy, right? Like there's no really character. A lot of these feel flat. And so so we'll go into the layouts I did for my 2019 portfolio, and you'll see they're a lot better, right? So this is my indoor layout for the following year in 2019, right? And I made this sciencey lab. All right. And you can see that the composition is a lot better. I have like pipes on the ceiling that kind of lead you down to this big screen, right? And I have other lines that then direct you into this area, right? And so you're kind of your focus is usually, like, at least the idea was that you kind of look at the TV first, and you move to this tree over here, right? And so I drew this traditionally, but then I just digitally added some like shading on top of it. And and I have different boxes and things. And I actually, it's funny, when I was developing this, just even the placement of things on the ground have a huge difference, right? Like when I had this box was not there originally, and I found that when it wasn't there, like my eye just kind of went straight to this tree over here. But I wanted the eye to kind of travel, to the TV and then into that area, right? So you definitely can play around with where you place objects, where you put them. And then this is my outdoor environment, right? So this is kind of like it's like I guess a cabin in the woods kind of thing. And you'll notice, like everybody was talking about, there's like a lot of detail closer. The closer you are in perspective, the line is a bit thicker. And then the further you get into perspective, the less detail you need to include, right? You'll notice if I zoom in on the house, like I'm not even drawing all the individual bricks, right? Like there's suggestions of it, but it's not all there, right? So it's like I'm keeping it pretty general. And then obviously the closer we are to frame, things are really like I'm putting as much detail as possible. And so just to kind of quickly show the process. Um, Again, I planned these compositions in my sketchbook, right? Like this is the cabin in the woods. I was like, okay, I want to make the environment feel a little bit more organic than that park I had done the previous year, right? The previous year it felt very flat. So I brought in some of those ideas, and like this is what what you learn at APW is bringing in that idea of gesture into everything you do, right? So I'm already trying to think about flow and like how the trees and might frame the house, and how the hill might roll and might make lead us to the house, right? And like the same with like the lab, right? I have some like small like first versions of it, and I'm thinking about how the pipes might lead our eye. And this is like you can see a very rough version of that final layout that I came up with, right? And so you just want to plan, make multiple versions. Here you can see I'm writing little notes to myself, right? Like, and that's really what you want to do. You want to make sure you're thinking about everything, right? You need to plan everything. And so then eventually, so this was one of my first versions of the outdoor environment. You can see there's no path in the foreground, and I felt that the foreground felt a little unlinked to the house, right? So then I redrew it, and that's when I added that path, and you can see there's a connection now from all the way from the foreground into the background. And so that's about it. In terms of personal drawings, if you guys are wondering, I just included a variety of things I had done in high school. So like some paintings and some traditional stuff, and like some pencil drawings, some like oil paint stuff. Just for personal work, don't get too caught up in it. They just want to see a variety of stuff. And yeah, I'm sorry if I went a little bit over time there, but that's about it.
Jacob, you did great. So I see that you have some stuff shared there.
Yes,
Those,
yes.
those are things that can you just show us maybe your two favorite ones?
Sure.
Yeah.
I really like this. This is from, so I did a thesis film this year as part of my the final project you do in school. And so it's kind of like a live action 2D and 3D mix, right? And so this is one of the shots from it. It's like VHS, like camcorder footage. And then yeah, and so like we can see that there's just to kind of tie it all together, right? Like we have a lot of things going on. Like the perspective is changing, the characters going into the background. And, again, in APW, you're going to learn how to move a character in perspective, right? And that's something I carried with me all the way into my fourth year, right? Like I'm drawing a duck who's running into the background, right? And those are all things you got to keep in mind, right? But ends up getting more and more complicated, like I mentioned, right? Like this is a duck, right? So I've got to make it feel like a duck, and that duck's waddling as well as he's moving in perspective, and he's holding a sandwich, and that sandwich is also moving. And so, those are all things you're going to have to start to think about when you start working in school, because you're going to be working with more complex scenes and more complex ideas. And so if you have a solid foundation to start with, it's that you're already going to be in a really great position, right? And so like we can even just like look at this shot where, we have this character, and he's, the main character, he's like filming all these different things and he's playing around with things. And you can see there's actually some really great poses in here, right? Like, so we can look at when he's like so the anticipation of him before he catches his camera, right? Like he's got his hands wide and then he really quickly like grasps the camera, right? And so you have these are all ideas that you think about and that were taught when we're first learning animation at APW, right? Like is, you know, you want these strong key poses, you want these strong poses, and then everything in between, you know, is just kind of polish at that point. But if you have strong poses, just like if you have really strong, like if you practice and you draw and, you know, you really get an understanding of the fundamentals of drawing for animation, if you have that solid foundation, you'll just be able to excel and just go places that you never thought you'd be able to, right? So don't be discouraged if it takes you more than one try. If you know, if you find that you're struggling right now, you know, I was very much there, right? But since then, I've only just continued to learn and you know, do what you can and have fun with it, right? And yeah, that's about it.
Thanks, Jacob. So let's all give Jacob a round of applause. I know I can't hear you, but let's all clap for Jacob. I can see some of you guys. And we're just gonna open the floor for some questions. So if there's any questions that you wanted to ask Jacob, maybe Kacey, you guys can ask. We're just gonna field the floor for questions. Let's first take care of Jacob. And if there's any question that you have for Jacob right now, you guys can ask them. Just put them in the chat and we can find them. What is your favorite class at Sheridan? And which is the most challenging for you personally? I think this one's directed towards Jacob.
Yeah. Well, for me, to be honest, this is gonna like it'll probably disappoint you, but I love every class very much. And that's why I made a thesis film that incorporated as many different mediums of animation as possible. Like I have, like I was showing you with that, like that duck shot, you know, there's 3D, there's 2D, and there's live action, right? And at least for me, I've always loved everything about film, and I've always had a great time in all of my classes. I think story, if I had to like choose, I really love story class. Like I'm not a storyboard artist, but I think I've just always, again, my passion lies in making films and thinking about the creative process, and a lot of that process is in the story stage. But again, like I love everything about animation, and so yeah, I think I've really enjoyed everything. And I think out of the classes that I struggled most, might have been like oddly enough life drawing. Not that it was tough or like that I didn't feel prepared or anything. Like I had a really great time in life drawing, but there's always more, right? Like there's always tons to learn with life drawing, and you can study the anatomy for years and years and years and years, and like you'll find that there's just always more and more to understand. And it's great to just keep drawing and keep practicing. And that's the thing. I was also another class I loved attending, right? Like it was just like you get there, it's like one of the only classes where you're just drawing from start to finish. And it's just so much fun. And so even though like, you know, there's like, especially in second year, for instance, you start learning about the muscles, like different like the muscle anatomy, right? First year is focused on bones, right? And so muscles start getting really complicated. And you're learning a lot in a short period of time. So it was difficult in that sense, but I still had so much fun, and it wasn't like it was something that was overwhelming or to be scared about, right? But yeah, there's lots of fun things, and again, you're gonna find the things that you enjoy most, and you're probably gonna enjoy everything, right? So yeah.
Okay, so this question is going to be directed towards Kacey. What are your biggest sources of inspiration? Like, do you have any favorite animated movies, shows, or creators?
Yeah, I do have a couple. Biggest inspirations, I'd say partly everyday life and partly also just shows in general and stuff. I really like Spider-Verse. Arcane is also a really good one. Recently, I got into Big Top Burger, so it's a web series. I really like it. And yeah, it's just a bunch of random stuff that gets put together in my mind. So yeah.
Nice. And I'm going to direct this question to Jacob. So, what kind of advice would you give to someone who started late?
I would say that, you're always going to think that you're starting late, especially if you're not coming straight out of high school, right? Like, for instance, like for me, I graduated from high school and then I spent 2 years in between high school and Sheridan getting in. And but then, I thought like, oh, this is, like I'm already behind, I'm falling behind. But then I like at APW, especially when I was taking the APW classes, I was talking with other people and I just found how many people were in a very similar position as I was. And Vince was talking about it at the beginning as well, where it's actually way more common than you think, right? It is tough to get into animation school. That's a fact, right? And again, it's like everybody comes from different walks of life. Everybody comes from different, experiences, right? So if you can't base, because again, about you and how you draw. And if you're having fun, again, it's like you don't need to focus on how everybody else is doing, right? It's about you and it's about your personal growth, right? And so for me, it was just understanding that everybody's on their own path, everybody's coming from a different walk of life. Some people I knew didn't start drawing until after high school. Some people had never even thought about going into animation. And for me myself, I was almost went into live action production before I went into animation, right? Which is partially why my thesis film has live action in it, because it's another thing I really enjoy, right? And so so again, it's like you're at the level that you're at, and that's great. And and just keep drawing, right? Like you're gonna get there just by practicing. And if you enjoy it, then you're not gonna ever get tired of it, and you're not gonna get and it can be tough, right? Just don't let that other people discourage you. Change that discouragement into inspiration. Like I looked at other people's stuff and like, wow, they made it in. Like, like that's amazing. And I took every failure as an opportunity to get better, right? Like I remember when I applied to Sheridan, 2 times and failed before I made it in and made it in. And I remember both times, as soon as I got that email notice that's like, oh, unfortunately, you didn't make it in. I remember I was upset about it for maybe like 5 minutes, and I was like, but what's the point? What's the point about being upset about this? Because that's not going to get me anywhere. What's going to get me to where I want to be is just being, drawing and doing as much as I can. And I was like, you know what? This is, sure, I didn't make it in this time, but this is an opportunity to just keep growing. I have now, more time to continue improving. And so, yeah, that's some of my general advice. I know I went all over the place, but hopefully some of that helps.
Quickly for the audience, Jacob, what's your favorite film?
Oh, this is always the
It could be
toughest.
animated. What's your favorite film, just for the audience?
Okay, you're gonna notice the thing, like for me, I love too many things that it's always so hard for me to like choose a favorite. Animated is probably Lion King. I've always really liked Lion King, and that was the
No, Lion
film.
King's next.
I was obsessed with that as a kid. So, or Lilo and Stitch. Those are the two I was obsessed with as a kid. So those are probably my two favorite animated films.
It's really interesting because both you and Kacey listed my favorite films.
Oh,
Lion
nice.
King, Lilo and Stitch, and Spider-Verse. Yeah, those are my three favorite films. Spider-Verse, I'm looking forward to the next one coming out. Um, we had Patrick O'Keefe, the art director for Spider-Verse. He was a student of APW, not in my time, but before. And yeah, he's a fabulous artist, makes a lot of great work. So you guys should check him out. And let's move to another question, actually. Let's take a look. Okay, so since it's fairly recent for you, Kacey, I'm just going to ask you this question. How did you stay motivated throughout your portfolio process?
For me, it was more just of thinking like everyone is their own person. So, I see the question here. They talk about seeing other people's amazing work, and of course, I also felt a little disheartened when I first started thinking about preparing, because I was like, how am I going to get up to this skill level? But honestly, it's just a bunch of practice and just getting into it, and just make your own work, make work that you yourself is proud of, and don't worry about too much about how other people are seeing it. Just kind of have fun with it pretty much. And it should be pretty good because again, you are your own person and there's not too much point comparing yourself to other people's work because of course they're going to be different. And of course you might see your work as like, oh, it's not as good as this person's, not as good as that person's. But in their eyes, they might see it and like, holy cow, that's some really good like perspective or something, you know? So you never know until you try it. So
Yeah, well said. Said. So let's take, I see there's quite a few questions here. I'm just trying to get through all of them, or at least majority of them. Let's see. So Jacob, can you explain the difference between copying versus actually learning how to draw? Because
Yeah.
yeah, copying, you're just looking at something and just trying to replicate it. But actually, since you've been through the process of making a portfolio actually 3 times, and during that time, you had to learn how to draw. You couldn't fake it. But so, can you explain that?
Yeah. Yeah, so that's the thing. I think, especially, and I kind of mentioned it a little earlier, was especially from high school, it was very much a more of a traditional just kind of art program. So it was a lot of like, okay, here is a bowl of fruits, draw this bowl of fruits exact like as much like as realistically and as exact as possible. And so I was in that mindset, especially coming out of high school. Where I could draw, like everything looked like it was supposed to. But it was, especially with animation, we're drawing reality, right? We're using our imagination. We're pulling things from everywhere and we're making characters and ideas that can't exist in reality. So you need to take what you know about reality and kind of bend it in a way. And that's where gesture drawing and just in drawing for animation and especially for me taking APW was where I learned that whole skill set of like, oh, okay, like this is reality, but you need to bend it, right? You need to like reality is boring and we're trying to make stuff that's really exciting and interesting and things that we've never seen before. And so you can't rely on copying, right? Like you have to rely on feelings many of the times. You have to kind of channel a general feeling and things like that. And that's what we talk about when we're gesture drawing, right? Like it's like what is the pose like what does the pose feel like? What is it what's it trying to say? Where's it going? And so I think that's where like copying is like there's nothing wrong with copying, right? Like you can get some really great drawings out of it and copying is great for studying, right? But then bringing in that understanding of trying to bring in some life and some energy and some new ideas into the work underneath. That's where the gesture drawing comes in. That's where keeping your drawings loose and getting a better understanding of energy and all of that stuff helps and then it comes into then what we talk about where it's like animation, like drawing a character or bringing something that shouldn't be alive. And it was really satisfying for me because I remember I was just so locked into like, okay, I needed like some kind of reference. Like I was like, okay, I need my brother to pose, and like I need like, or like if I'm gonna draw a layout, for instance, I drew my room, I drew a park in my neighborhood. But then, as you saw with my later portfolio, I started making things up. I started in my sketchbook and like I was talking about, I was drawing a gesture first, right? And so I think I mean, it's a great question because that is what we do as animators. That's what we do as artists, right? Is we take reality and we mix it up into a way that we can express something about ourselves, or we can express an idea that we want to kind of get out there. And so it is quite literally at the core of what we do. And so it is a lot of practice to kind of get that idea into your drawings, right? But it's a fun process. It's a really great process. And so yeah, no, just keep at it and hopefully that kind of answers what you were asking.
Yeah, Yep, well said, Jacob. I see how the process of seeing something, observing it, internalizing it, and then doing something else with it, taking it and rearranging it or changing it up because you've looked at, you observed, and you took in all the information you can, and now once you understand it, you can make it your own. And I believe Vince here too, so I want to spotlight you, Vince.
Oh, hey, yeah. Jacob, I was listening to what you were saying, and you reminded me of something. I can remember over and over having conversations with animation students, and then having conversations with and watching people who are learning how to draw in order to become animation students and to become animators and to to go out and be part of that world. And over, it always came back to me that Jacob, I think you mentioned this or something along these lines of there's yes, you mentioned catching up. So there's learning how to draw, and then there's learning how to do virtually everything in animation, how to design characters, how to do layouts, how to do storyboards, how to create animation, the idea of timing, pace, and the principles of animation. Kacey, you were talking about some of the principles of animation that it occurred to me that of those two things, learning how to draw is probably in some ways the more difficult. Well, maybe not difficult, but the more engaging, the more long term. And the nice thing about it is that if you spend time and really focus on it, like really focus on it, you won't need us anymore. Like you in a certain sense, you will just be self-sustaining. In the sense of, okay, I'm prepared. I've developed ways. Kacey, you showed all of the ways that you, okay, I take this idea and then I do this with it, and then that didn't work, and I'll change this. And there's this internal process that you now own. And now it's a flexible process, of course, but once it knowing how to draw, and I guess I'm taking my inspiration from the question, and not to copy. It's just a matter of going down deep a little bit further, and then you're rooted, you're ready. And then, okay, whatever happens, whatever I'm asked to do, I'm okay, I'm ready. And then having that strong feeling within yourself that even if you decide, well, maybe animation is not my thing, it's okay too. You still contain that with you and within you, so you can move to illustration or some other application of drawing. I mean, at the end of the day, animation is just an extension of drawing, really. But yeah, both of you guys just reminded me of a couple of those things. I don't want to take up all the time here, so thanks.
Thank you, Vince. Thank you for giving us your wisdom on the topic. So we're gonna have Kacey back here, and Jacob, I'm gonna bring you back as well. And here's another question. This one, just okay. So what takes up more time, designing characters and backgrounds, or the actual process of animation? Let's have you, Kacey. You can answer that question.
I think I'd say animation takes a little more time because designing characters just personally for me, I find it a little bit easier, and you can kind of adjust it along the way. Animation itself does take a lot of time to get down. I know when I started doing more animations on Blender, I found it really hard to just get the lines precise and stuff. So I'd say the actual process of animating takes more time because you're drawing the character more than once. You're drawing it like maybe 24 times for just 1 second. So yeah.
Right. And Jacob, for you personally, what do you think?
I was gonna, yeah, I was gonna say, I think it really depends on the person, right? Because everybody has their own strengths, right? And so for me, animation is something that has always come to me really naturally. So animation does take a long time, because you're doing a lot of drawings, right? Like just a couple seconds of animation is a lot of drawings, right? But if you understand it, it can end up going pretty quickly. Whereas like if you have difficulty with like perspective, or if you have difficulty with other things, it really can depend from person to person. And I think and you'll just get faster at whatever you enjoy the most. And so I was going to say, like, I spent a lot of time personally on in my portfolio, I spent a lot of time on that final storyboard that I ended up doing, right? Because those are like, it's essentially, it's 4 panels, but you know, you want to make sure the compositions are really good. You want to make sure that the layout is structured, right? Like it's almost like 4 mini layouts that you need to do. You've got the characters poses you gotta like think of and actually understand how to draw the character. And then on top of that, you've got like a story and you got to think about framing. So there's a lot going on even in the storyboard section. And so I think personally that's what ended up taking me the longest. Not that I found it more difficult, but there was a lot more thinking that was involved with that piece especially. So and that's the thing. It's good to be aware of what might be taking you longer, right? Like if you find that you're like, oh man, like every time I try to draw a character, it takes me a really long time, you know, and that might be something you want to focus on, right? Whereas like the more quick things, keep practicing those, but you know, invest more time in the areas that you might be you know, struggling, so that you can across the board be pretty much efficient no matter what you're doing.
Thank you, Jacob. Thank you for answering that as well. So I'm just going to take this time just to let you guys all know that also next week we're going to be having a portfolio review. So for Saturday, for 2 hours, we're going to have a portfolio review. So if you had a portfolio that you've worked on or you're in the process of making, bring it out. You can send it to our APW email that's in our link. So Vince will put the link in the chat, and you guys can find all the information there. Also, starting in June 1st, our online class will be starting. So our online class Kacey took this class. Kacey, back in 2022, Kacey was an online student, and it worked for them. They were doing lots of gestures and just following the schedule where they're doing exercises and coming to class on the weekend and gesture drawing and drawing characters, learning the foundation of drawing. Basically, that's going to start on June 1st. So if you guys want more information, please contact Bernadette. And if you guys have any questions, you can contact Bernadette, book a call, make sure that you guys get the information that you need. And Bernadette is right here as well. So if you have anything that you want to add, I know you mentioned at the beginning as well.
Yeah, well, I just wanted to about the event that you talked about for next weekend. If you could clarify, so people are to send in their portfolios, but it's got specific drawings that you want to see.
Yeah.
And they're going to be randomly selected, right? Because you can't show everybody's portfolio. So
Yeah, so it's a random selection. So you guys are going to submit the portfolios to the APW Gmail. The email is on the link. So once you find that email, you submit your portfolio. And then the day of the portfolio review, there'll be 6 portfolios that are selected, and you will have your portfolios reviewed by myself, Vince, and Gerard.
I only have one question.
Who's speaking?
Me, Finn. How much does it cost for the ADW portfolio course?
Well, the review is free, so the portfolio review is free. In terms of pricing for the course, just email Bernadette. All the financial stuff you can find out from Bernadette. The email is in the chat right there, and you can book a call. Okay. All right, so we're gonna field for 2 more questions. So if you guys have 2 more questions for Kacey or Jacob, then you guys, I'll answer them, and we'll put the meeting to a close. Thank you guys all for your questions. So just keep them coming. I'm gonna look for 2 more questions for Kacey and Jacob. So if anyone has any questions. There you go. So Vince put the APW Discord email. So yeah, here you go. There you guys go. So here's another question. So Kacey, can you elaborate on the principles of animation and what you use it, like how you use the principles to achieve your final product?
Yeah, so basically there's a bunch of different principles. I believe there's 16. Unfortunately, I can't really name them off the top of my head, but the key ones that I personally use mainly is anticipation, stretch, and squash. Those are the big three personally that I use. Technically, you're supposed to use all of them. Unfortunately, I can't list them at this moment, but what they do is they're principles that you can add onto your animation. For example, if you have like a character jumping up and down, you can add squash and stretch, and it makes the flow, makes the animation have more flow, maybe a little more satisfying to look at and stuff. Of course, in real life, like if you were to jump and down, you might squish using your knees and stuff, but you might not stretch kind of vertically or horizontally. And it just makes it look more cartoony and a little more smooth and stuff. So principles are really nice to study, and it kind of helps give more life to your animation.
Thank you, Kacey. Thank you. And I'm going to ask Jacob this question right here. Okay. So with how much you guys practice through repetition, how do you get past that art block?
Yeah, so I think art block, and you actually bring up a good point, right? Like you're drawing a lot, right? And you're drawing a ton, and sometimes that's the only thing people do is they'll just draw, 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 and they won't stop. And I'm a big advocator for taking some breaks every once in a while, right? Because that's where your inspiration comes from, is just living life and doing things that you enjoy, right? And so, and there's nothing with drawing as much like, constantly, because if that's what you want to do, if that's what makes like is motivating you, and if that keeps you energized, then do it. Just keep drawing, right? But for me, I know I'm someone personally who I love drawing, I love film, I love everything about it. But I every once in a while, I have other hobbies too. And so I'll go biking, I'll watch movies, I'll watch shows, I'll listen to music, I'll hang out with my friends downtown. And, there's all these different things that, you just do normally. And then before you know it, you just kind of, something comes up in your mind. You see something that you might have, as you're out and about doing something that you're like, oh, that would be like that person I saw on the TTC. Like, let me sketch them. That's like a really cool, like, just like, it looks like a character almost, right? Or like, you'll be out and about, or like you see a building, right? And like, you're like, wow, that building's really interesting. The architecture is really nice. Let me draw that. Like, or that's inspiring. And so for me, another thing I really enjoy is photography. Like I have a camera. I'll go out to all kinds of places, especially like downtown Toronto is a perfect place. There's just so much to take photos of. And like I know Vince is very similar. He'll do the same thing. He's a big photography guy. And I know that we like, and that's where I find a lot of inspiration. And even though it's a hobby, right? Like I'm still thinking about composition. I'm still thinking about framing and things that end up actually coming back into my work, right? And so it just I think the short answer is, if you're getting burnt out, right, it's probably, if you just keep drawing, you're just going to burn out more, right? And so you definitely want to incorporate taking breaks. And it's another thing that we talk about in school and at APW and everything is sometimes if you're working, like let's say I'm working on an animation and I've been working on it because it's an assignment, do it, in a couple weeks or whatever. And I've just been working on it all day. Sometimes when you've been looking at the same thing for like 24 hours, even more, 48 hours, you start not noticing the mistakes and some of the things that you might have not, like some things start slipping by because you've been looking at it for so long, you start getting used to everything. And so that's where stepping away for just a little bit really helps, because if you go to bed or something and then look at the same piece again in the morning, you'll be looking at it with a fresh perspective, and you'll be like, oh, here's all the things that I didn't realize last night when I was working on this, but now that I've stepped away from it for a bit, I actually kind of see all these, like, things that I could tweak. Or you, while you were doing something else, let's say, instead of going to bed, you go and watch a movie, an idea might come up while you're watching the movie, right? Or you're taking a shower or something and you're just thinking in the shower, like, oh, I know what to do for that animation now. Like, ideas come in all kinds of places. You never know. And so it's again, it's sometimes, in that case, if you're burnt out, it might seem counterintuitive to just step away from the drawing for a little bit, but it in reality will do a lot for your work, is to just get, step away, decompress for a bit, and then come back to it, and you'll have all kinds of new ideas. So yeah.
Thank you, Jacob, for that insight. And we're going to do 2 more questions. So this one's going to be directed to Kacey. Should I be looking at Sheridan Portfolios online to fix my portfolio?
I'd say you can. Yeah, it's good to cross-reference, but also keep in mind, again, with the previous question I answered from before, don't feel too discouraged from seeing them. You can just kind of sort of cross-reference what other people are doing as well. Like, if you have 3 portfolios that you're looking at, you can look through all of them and see, oh, what are potential patterns that they're doing. And you can kind of implement that into your own. So yeah, I think it is definitely helpful to look online for different portfolios and stuff. Yeah.
Okay. And
Yeah, can I just interject?
yeah.
Sorry, Kacey, I don't want to sort of sound like I'm stepping all over you, but I would say, as an instructor, an art instructor, and an artist of over 30 years, I would say it's probably not a good idea. And I'll tell you why. I think I know what you're saying. You're looking around for inspiration and, oh, look, they did this, they did that this way or whatever. But what I'm going to say, and maybe Jacob might be able to back me up on this too, but is a Sheridan student who got into Sheridan has certain skills that they got into. You have those skills. You got into Sheridan, but they are still a student, right? They're not a teacher. They call themselves tutors, a lot of them, and that's fine, but they're not teachers with 25 plus years of experience. So I would say because what I've seen over the years is a lot of very similar looking portfolios. And I think, who was it? Was it 2? Or I don't know if it was Kacey, if it was you or 2 that said something about drawing characters from, like, just draw a real person you see at the cafe and turn them into a character. I love that. I think that's so inspirational to me. Instead of taking every other character from a movie or a game that we've all seen and watched and just tweaking it a little, it's not your character. It's still not enough of you, right? And I love to see when students step forward and really take a risk with some crazy character that just literally comes out of their wild dreams or whatever, your scribblings or something, seeing a guy on the subway or something. So I would say the Sheridan student thing, I would say, if you're going to take a course with teachers and real instructors, focus on that. And because the thing about the Sheridan student thing is they're showing drawings that they do in Sheridan. You're trying to get in. So you can't already be drawing like them. It'll just be a superficial kind of, because what I also see when people take our workshops, sometimes they learn all this amazing stuff, and you guys didn't do this, so I'm not saying, but then they get to the end and they think, oh, I just need to fix it up and polish it up. And they go and they look at those lines, the swishy lines, and the dark and the light, and erase this and erase that. And so it's a superficial application of what they've learned. And it's okay to have some looser, messy lines. I think, Jacob, you were saying that even when you're in Sheridan, right? Like, sure, there's a process called cleanup and it's important and it happens, but I think that's just a little cautionary thing that I want to, because I see it over and over and over and over again. I don't know. Vince, did you want
to add on to what Bern's saying?
Yeah, I understand. Ultimately, we are one person with one pencil and one sketchbook or one iPad or one whatever. and looking out over the whole wide world, whether the whole wide world is, I don't know, our cat in the corner falling asleep, or a family member falling asleep watching a boring movie on Netflix. Ultimately, yeah, it's one artist looking at the world, and I kind of agree with that. Like, that's the starting point, and then the benefit of looking at other people's work is that you see other people's creativity, and you can kind of gauge how you're doing, I suppose, in terms of creativity. Um, the downfall with that is that if you're developing yourself through just drawing whatever's in front of you, um, there is a skill actually to learning. It sounds weird, but you kind of have to learn how to learn. Um, and then once you can do that, then you'll probably know, it'll be more clear to you, not, for example, there are other schools, and they will teach you how to copy styles. Um, Ultimately, I guess you do need to know how to draw different styles in animation. That's a skill that you're going to need to have. But it all depends, I guess, I think, the stage of your development, right? So if you're starting out, just, yeah, I kind of agree. Draw what's in front of you, like Kacey, like all of your drawings in your sketchbook of just people just sitting there. It looked like maybe they were, I don't know what, just waiting for somebody, or in a cafe or something like that. Ultimately, you're going to look at these people and these situations, and you're going to draw them. And no two people are going to look and see the same thing. And so you're going to end up seeing things a little bit differently. And then your motivation to create characters is going to kick in, and you'll end up with characters that look different. And I think, that's got to be the goal, hasn't it? Like, to fully express your creativity. It makes me understand too how the drawing part of it is just, I'm sure a bunch of people here can speak more than one language. It's the language part. And that saying about language, that it is, when you've got a second language, when you can actually tell a joke in that second language, that's how you know you've got it. Well, it's kind of similar with drawing. Like, you'll know that when there's a certain point when your observational drawing gets attached to your creativity, you will be approaching that point when you can just tell a joke in another language. In other words, you've got that language of drawing. You've got it. Step one is complete, and then you'll notice the other process that takes place naturally, for you creating your very own characters. But there is a note of caution for sure. I mean, we've seen other schools that blatantly will get students to, like, here's a character, now everybody copy the character, and what you get is very clear. You learn how to draw that character, but meanwhile, there's all your ideas that are just kind of sitting there, like, and so I do see the risks in that, but for sure the benefits of just of learning on your own, I think, just be careful that doesn't develop into, oh, I wish I could do that, or I only want to do that. Everyone has, I guess, their own style. Believe me, I've seen this so many times. People learning how to draw from the very beginning, and then when their drawing just kind of reaches a state of development, it just seems like the characters, the layouts, the ideas, the animations, they just start to show themselves. I hope that adds a little bit to that discussion. It's an important discussion, I think.
Can I just add one more thing? Sorry, Josh, you're like, we're almost over. Okay, just a quick little thing, and that is to say, I don't know if this has been mentioned yet, but it bears mentioning again, is that learning, like Vince was talking about the language, that's a great analogy, because it's learning a skill for life. If you're an artist, if you're, a lawyer, you don't really care about learning the drawing skill for life. But if you're an artist, that's what you want. You don't want to learn some little tricks and then get into a school And like Kacey and two and all of you and Jacob, you guys have you've rolled up your sleeves and you've put in the work, and it's not just to do your portfolio, right? It's because Jacob can speak to this. It's to get you through animation school. And now it's to get you through working in the industry, right? Especially with AI. And that's a whole other thing that we haven't really probably talked about, but AI versus humanoids who learn how to draw are going to really have an advantage over AI, who might take your job if you're just good at copying. But anyway, that's a whole other humongous discussion, maybe to be continued at another meeting.
Okay, so I have one more question for Jacob. Because I mean, this applies to you, Katie, as well, because you're applying out of high school. But I'm going to ask Jacob, since you applied out of high school, you didn't get in, and then you tried again, and then you got into Sheridan on your third try, and you finished the Sheridan program. So to finish off, Jacob, what advice would you give to a high school student applying for the first time?
I would say, give it your best shot. I've seen a lot of people make it in through high school, and I've seen just as many people not, but don't be discouraged. Because either, like, again, when you're applying, there's a lot of stress. I was really stressed about my first portfolio, and it almost feels like, it's everything, right? But do your best, and even if you don't get the result that you might want, use it as a learning opportunity, right? There's a lot to learn, and it's great that you get that score sheet back once you hand in your portfolio and it's marked, because then you can kind of see the areas that you can improve or whatnot. And even if you get in, look at that score sheet, see where you can improve. Because again, you don't want to be getting into an animation school and there might be something that you still really don't understand, because then you're going to be basically playing catch up for the rest of your time in school. So again, don't like, it is a big deal, right? This is our futures, these are our careers, these are our dreams, right? But everyone's path is different, and there's no set timeline for, it's not like, okay, I'm in high school, and so that means the very next year I need to be in some kind of college program, right? Like, that's not the case for most people. Like, for all my close friends, I can only think of one that actually went into a program right out of high school and stayed in that program, right? So you're still so young in high school. They're still figuring out so many things about yourself and about what career paths you might want to go, and you might not be sure about a lot of things. And trust me, there is a lot to figure out, and you can only figure those things with time and with experience. So my personal, if you're overwhelmed with all the different things, if you're overwhelmed, like, just take it one step at a time, right? Your goal right now is to get into an animation schools and make this portfolio. Make the portfolio, and then don't worry about anything after that, right? Like, you made the portfolio, did your best, and then once you see the results for that, you'll then know what your next step is going to be. It's either, I made it in, great, or I didn't make it in, and what does that mean for me? Does that mean I make another, or do I, do something else instead? And so just don't overwhelm yourself. You don't need to know all the answers right away. Just go at it one step at a time, kind of thing. So, yeah.
Right. Thank you, Jacob. Thank you for answering that. And thank you for all the guest speakers that were here to show us their portfolio and share with us a little bit of the process in making a portfolio. And with you, Jacob, as well, showing us your 3 portfolios, your animations that you were doing in school, and just a little bit of wisdom in terms of, like, what is it like to be a Sheridan student, graduating Sheridan. So let's give a round of applause for our 3 speakers.
Good.
One speaker had to leave. And before you guys leave, Vince, he in the chat, he left a link. So that's a link to our next event next Saturday, May 11th, for a portfolio review. Right. So if you guys can all look into the chat, and like, if you scroll up, you'll see a link that Vince has posted. It's an Eventbrite link. Right. So that's for portfolio review on May 11th. All the information that you need is going to be within that link. So just give me a second.
While you're reading that, Josh,
Yeah.
I just want to also mention, I don't know if you mentioned this, I see that Josh put the APW Discord in the chat as well, if you want to scroll up and see that. Because we have our own Discord, I don't know, what do you call it? Channel? I don't know. Anyway, you young people know. And if you want to go on there, you can chat amongst yourselves. I think sometimes Kacey and other students are on there. I don't know, just to chat in general, or if you had any more questions for us about anything, it's another place to do that, to find us.